Daily habits and behaviors support your energy and your ability to serve, or slowly prevent you from making your biggest impact. So, your behaviors are either adding to your energy, keeping it sustainable over the long term, keeping it buoyant and fun and motivating and creative, or it's taking away from it. Are you a creator that constantly feels exhausted and finds it hard to keep motivating yourself? Or are you a creator that always says yes to opportunities, or one that prioritizes work over everything else? And then at the end of the day, you're exhausted. At the end of the day, you don't know where the day went, or you wake up dreading your day because it's going to require too much of you. What if you can make minor habit changes that allow you to keep your creative career in marathon mode sustainable over the long term versus sprint mode where you have peaks and crashes? What if you could summon or create the energy that you needed on demand to create, to serve, to deliver the greatest impact you can with your work? Welcome to Creators That Crush, the show where we help you move from crushed to crushing it as a creator. I'm your host and certified high performance coach, Shawn Buttner. In today's episode, we are going to answer the question, how do creators that crush keep exhaustion at bay? And what are the simple things you can do to have boundless energy when you need it and to sustain that energy over the long term? Before we get into checklist, I have a quick story for you. About 10 or 12 years ago, I went to a Brendan Burchard event. It was like a 3-day seminar where Brendan talked from 9 to 9, 9 in the morning to 9 at night, with some breaks in between. And on this particular event, we go into the conference room. There's about 600 or 700 people there. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of loud music. It gets quiet. Brendan starts to talk, and his voice is hoarse, and you can tell that he's struggling. And he explains right off the bat that we all paid to be in this room to hear him talk for 3 days. And he's a coach. He does these online events. He's a speaker. He had a YouTube channel. He does webinars and marketing. So his voice is very important to him. And he said he had been doing a series of speaking events, and he was losing his voice. And that they're working to make adjustments for the next 3 days. So they might end a little bit early on that first day. And they're looking to try to make it work, but he assured us that he'd figure it out. And he's like struggling. You could tell his voice was gone. And I remember thinking, like, how terrible must that be as a creator where your number one tool is your voice, or your number one tool is your head or your brain, or your ability to write, or your health? And to have that give out what really mattered. Like maybe you've had that experience. I know as a coach and a podcaster, I can't imagine losing my voice. So we struggled through that morning with Brendan. We take an extra long lunch. And I found out later, because Brendan talked about it on one of his other events later. He said that he called around to all his speaker friends and was like, hey, I'm struggling. My voice is giving out. Is there anyone that knows anything that could help? And so he's networking. He gets back to, he's like, you need to give this guy a call. His name is Roger Love. And Roger Love's a voice coach. I think he deals mostly with celebrities and people in LA. He's the guy who was Bradley Cooper's voice coach for A Star Is Born. And so he gets a lot of these calls. The speaker circuit knew of him. And so Brendan, at lunch, called Roger Love. Roger gave him some exercises to help him with his voice. And so when we got back from that lunch break on that first day, Brendan's voice was back, right? He wasn't as loud or dynamic as he normally was, but you could hear him clearly, which is what he needed to get through that weekend. And crisis was averted, right? Turns out, after surviving that weekend, Brendan then started to do the work to learn how to breathe and support his voice so that he could talk forever. So there's a way to talk where you're damaging your vocal cords if you're not breathing properly. If you ever taken a voice lesson, and Brendan did the work, and His career's skyrocketed. The guy is really rocked it. But that's beside the point. The key lesson here for you as a creator is that Brendan was doing his normal business. He had the heart to serve, and he was taking on more and more as he was expanding his business and his impact and his message. And the one thing he needed physically to deliver that was at jeopardy because he was doing one thing a little bit wrong. There's one thing that just wasn't dialed in. And after the 30th speech in 3 months, his voice gave way. And as a creator, we're all doing this to ourselves. We are damaging our brains, we are damaging our energy, our motivation, the things that require us to have a healthy body to show up. And that's what we're going to talk about today in today's episode. The quick checklist I developed for you, and this is the basic things, right? So, like the story about Brennan, it's specifically about one habit not fully supporting his tool, which was his voice, and him nearly having a catastrophic event because he lost his voice. There's basic things we can do to our energy to make sure that, and habits that we can have that will help us generate the energy we need when you need to sit down and hit record on that podcast or YouTube video, or help you when you have that blank page sitting in front of you and you need to think through and create that article, book chapter, that thing that you create that's uniquely you in your voice. So that framework I've very silly called your EmoBS, only because creating frameworks is hard, and I was able to manipulate the framework to spell out that, and that made me laugh. So that's why we're now dealing with my EmoBS framework. So as we go through this, I want you to keep in mind that these are just illustrations of how small habits can really impact how you show up in your work. That's why this is really important. And this is a lot to do with helping your physical body, right? So the first part of the EmoBS is E, which is eating, nutrition, right? So it has to deal with your showing up and energizing your body with healthy food. And this is important. And I found this out doing the Whole30 a while back with my wife. If you're not familiar with the Whole30, it was a fad diet from a while back. I don't even remember what year. That was really solid, right? It really short cliff notes. It's no carbs, it's no beans, it's no dairy, it's no sugar, right? And you do that for 30 days. So it's mostly vegetable, protein, meat, or whatever. And then you slowly add those things back and you find out what is messing you up. And what I took away from that experience is that I didn't realize how much carbs and legumes were really messing up my body and sapping my energy, right? Because my experience in the Whole30 was the first 2 weeks, your energy is crap as your body's like, what are you doing to me, right? Bread is awesome. Why are you forsaking bread? Which is a problem for me. But after the 2 weeks, I started sleeping better. I started to lose weight at a crazy pace. Crazy just being a couple pounds a week, but it was noticeable. I felt like my head was clear. I felt like I had more consistent energy to just work throughout the day. And like I said, I was sleeping better. What that showed me personally is that the things that you eat really do matter to your energy level and your ability to create and produce. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. Make sure you talk to your health professionals before you do anything that changes your workouts or nutrition. But the question for you, creator, is what are you doing to make sure your nutrition's dialed in? Is it supplements? Is it knowing which foods are good and bad for you, or what foods give you the best energy? And if I could boil down years and years of experimenting for myself, if you keep it unprocessed food and mostly fresh stuff, that's a pretty good basis point for anything. And you'll notice a drastic change in your energy if you do that, in my opinion as a coach and in my personal experience. Processed food being things that don't come in bags or boxes, and then just your produce aisle and get good quality proteins. Pretty simple. But whatever that is for you, it's very imperative that you dial that in, because if you are operating at 1% less energy, or you're bringing 1% less energy to your work as you possibly could, you're not going to connect as well with your audience. You're not going to have the motivation or the creative energy when you need it. And that will prevent you from living the life that you want as a creator, or having the impact that you want as a creator. So that's the E in the EmoBS framework, eating. The M is movement, right? If, so much of our health is concerned with our physical body, but we also have emotional energy, and that can get trapped in your body. And I found that out, again, in my life when I had my first job at Walmart. I was a bunch of student debt. I was working a job that was, I had to be available 24/7 irregularly to make sure the systems were up and nothing crashed. And it was just a lot, right? And so I was snappy, I was exhausted, I was worn out. And I was so worn out that I thought it'd be a super great idea to sign up for the Chicago Marathon in 9 months. That's how desperate and dark it got for me. I'm like, a marathon will be something that's better than my current existence. And what I found out through that experience is I was snappy with teammates. I was always stressed out, always thrashing about. Like, I had a bunch of stuff I had to do and I could never get it done. And I felt bad about it. And I would sleep because I was stressed out about work, and it was this vicious cycle. Running miles and miles a week was really good for me because I could burn through a lot of that emotional stuff and then be like, okay, this is just a problem that I can solve logically. So physical activity can cover up a lot of emotional energy problems, and it can help you actually process them out so you can get to the work. If you are constantly battling with your team, or battling with audience members, or battling with people around you, you might need to up your movement game. And really, you don't have to do a lot of movement to see gains, right? Again, consult health professionals, but a half hour a couple of times a week of weight training and a half hour a couple of times a week of cardio is base recommendation that we've found in the high performance literature. That will get you performance gains. And if you can't do that, you can do something a little bit less. I'm here to challenge you to push yourself a little bit. And if you're already doing it, or you've exceeded it, would an experiment of bringing a little bit more of that to your life, would that change how you felt day to day? Because it's so easy to just forget that we need to move as humans. So make sure that's part of your daily and weekly rhythms. Okay. Next point in the EmoBS framework is outside sunlight. If you've ever had the vampire lifestyle, which is you wake up before the sun, you work in a building where there's no windows, and you leave after the sun has gone down and you never see the sun, you know how miserable of an existence that is. But if you've never experienced that, good. This is an extreme scenario that showed me you really need to get out in the sun. And really, because I had a couple of times where I had jobs like that, putting 30 minutes on the calendar to walk outside before or after lunch was a mood relegator. It was really calming. Like, I found it very, you're getting some movement in too, which is good. Maybe not as much as like a cardio session, but it's something. And it's just good for your mental health, right? You can, Steve Jobs at Apple would take walking meetings when he needed to talk or work through a problem. And I found it to be very helpful myself. When you look at your calendar, where do you have these planned outside movements? And rain or shine, snow, sleet, hail, tornadoes, earthquakes, whatever, be safe. Be safe and be sane about it. But when are you scheduled to get some sun on your face regularly? It's a simple tactic. It's one I think so many people neglect because you don't really realize how impactful that is, but it has a huge impact, especially if you live in like Chicago too, when the sun goes down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the winters. Anyways, okay. EmoBS framework is eating, movement, outside sunlight. The B is a breathing exercise. Really, the key takeaway here is what habits do you have to sustainably raise your creative and energetic levels? One simple habit that I really love from teaching people in my high performance coaching practice is just taking deep breaths. 10 deep breaths in through your nose forcefully and out through your mouth forcefully can completely change how you're feeling. It can turn you from grumpy to feeling relaxed and ready to get out. It's something that I do before coaching clients, before I do podcast episodes to help slow my nervous system down. And I know Andrew Haberman in the Haberman Lab podcast talks a lot about regulating your nervous system, doing breaths and breath work. And part of his not basically deep rest sleep. You can never get the dang letters correct, but there's like a rest protocol that he has, talks you through some breathing exercises. It's super important to help you raise up your energy, but in a way that's also calm and not like doing like 100 jumping jacks and getting your heart pumping, because usually what happens after that, there's a crash. This is really good for writing or being creative. Recommend that try it once a day for the next week, just once per day, maybe in the morning. Take 10 forceful breaths in your nose, out through your mouth. It will change your life. I promise. So check. So breathing, and then so we're on to the fifth part of the EmoBS framework, which I'm going to laugh every time. Fifth thing you need to do is sleep. And so many people need more sleep than they realize. As I've gotten older, I've appreciated this a lot more. I used to be a night owl and think I could get away with lower amounts of sleep, but there's a guy that I worked with at Apple, and he was terrible to work with. Right? He's a super smart, bright guy, and he would snap at you. He would be snarky. He would try to make you feel dumb, all because he thought he could survive on 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. And what really was going on is it just made him super tough to love and be around. So it wasn't really working as well for him as he thought. Just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. And again, I ended up burning out and leaving that job because he was having health problems. I'm sure sleep was part of it. But also, it's hard to get people on board or to connect with people when you're berating them because you're cranky, because you're tired. It really does impact us more. So the thing to keep in mind, the general idea for an average adult is you need like 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Schedule it, do what you have to do to get a great night's sleep. There's tons of great things out there to research. If I had a solid system, I'd let you know. I generally, I think for me, it's if you can keep your room cool at night somehow, that really helps. Just a couple other things that I do, but really you have to find what works for you. So, all right. So again, that's the EmoBS framework, which if you don't implement the EmoBS framework, you will be more sad and emo, which will prevent you from doing the work that you want. I'm not sure if that works or not. Here we are. So again, it's eating. What nutrition are you taking in to keep your energy consistent so you don't peak and crash? Movement. How are you moving emotions out so you can focus on problem solving and doing the work? Outside sunlight so that you can get your sleep and just feel better and more connected. A simple breathing exercise or whatever energy for the B part, to help you sustain a creative energy and help you create it on demand, like habit. You can do it anytime when you need more energy. It's good to have that in your pocket for when you need it. And then sleep, getting 7 hours of sleep, not trying to trick yourself. You can get away with before because the people around you will know that. Or the people around you will give you the feedback. You need to know actually works for you. All right. The secret to unbound energy and creativity is in your EmoBS. And again, the great news is these are habits you can do to increase your energy. You can do this, and you have more control over this, over your energy than you think. And the struggle is for most creators, is after learning about their EmoBS, it's getting into action and implementing these habits. Schedule your nutrition, your movement, your outside time, your deep breathing or energy breaks, and sleep, and you will have an energy that enables you to crush it. With that said, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I have a 5-day EL course. You can go to creatorsthatcrush.com, sign up for that. We go through the creative crush path. We outlined that in episode 1, and we talked about psychology last episode. This is under the pillow, under the pillar of physiology. We talk about productivity and persuasive people skills. Check out that email course if you're interested in. And we'll see you in the next episode of Creators That Crush.